Ladies and gents, my name is Matt Locke and you're listening to, and perhaps watching, the Unleashing Potential podcast. It's in these episodes that I chat with a range of progressive individuals who are unleashing their potential on the world around them at work and in life. With that said, I'm glad you're here so you can join me as we take a deep dive with today's guest. And welcome to the podcast. It is great to have you here. Why don't we kick off with you giving us a little bit about who Anne is, where in the world you are, and just tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, hey everyone, Matt, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. Right now I'm in Miami, Florida. I moved to Southeast Florida about 8 years ago, and I'm originally from Iowa. And Iowa is kind of close to Chicago, but it's very, very cold. And I grew up there, and I wanted to be closer to the sun and the warmth. So I live down here in South Florida, and a little bit about my background. Like I mentioned, I grew up in Iowa. But I was a student athlete my whole life. So I was very curious about sports and just anything about the world, animals, biking, basketball, soccer, swimming. I just tried it all. And so that's kind of how I started as a kid, very, interested in anything. And then kind of found my way towards basketball. And so I ended up playing Division I basketball. I got drafted in the WNBA, which, there's lots of stories there, but that was kind of my pre-career before my business career, where I work as a performance consultant now in a cybersecurity firm.
Sure, thank you. Well, there's so much to talk about in there, but in particular, the obvious correlation between your sporting and your highly successful sporting background. Mm-hmm. And your transition into the business world and the C-suite environment. And I'd be interested, I know that when we talked before, we talked about how you sort of reverse engineered and navigated your way through the introduction to the business world and have continued to do so, and brought with you a lot of the learnings around performance and peak performance and elite performance from your sporting career. I'd love to, let's just maybe park here for a while and talk about how that looked.
Oh, that's great. It was something that started very early on. I can even say like in middle school. So I mentioned, that I was into a ton of different activities as kids are, just kind of finding their way and curious about the world. And I found my way towards basketball, so much so that I received my first collegiate recruiting letter when I was in the 6th grade. So probably about 13 years old. And it was from the University of Northern Iowa. And at that age, I was just so impressionable. And I couldn't believe that a college university, a Division I here in the States, was recruiting me to be on their team in, another 5 or 6 years. And so at that point, I went from being, really enjoyed basketball into being committed to basketball. And when you speak about reverse engineering, I really look at it like you have that point in the future that you're looking towards, like a Division I scholarship at that time when I was in middle school that I really wanted to achieve. And then I started working my way backwards from that goal. And so I set myself in the future, 4 or 5 years down the line. And then how do I move my way towards that goal and become that person? And the funny thing is with reverse engineering and setting a future, goal or vision for yourself is that the minute you do that and you start taking even tiny actions, you kind of start becoming that person and being that person. You are the person who wakes up and goes to the gym and does dribbling drills at 6 a.m. or goes to the workout room after school, and like we said, it was just a non-negotiable for me because it was part of who I had set my goals out to be. So reverse engineering for me started at a young age that way. And when I finished playing collegiate basketball at Iowa State University, and we can fill in a few of those different stories, but even that time period when I finished being an athlete was another major milestone where you had to look a little bit bigger and see what I wanted to do with my career and work on that reverse engineering of what businesses do I want to learn and what new skill sets do I want to learn? Who are the people I want to be around? And just kind of filling in that blank so I can start moving a little bit closer towards being that person. And that's how reverse engineering has been for me as a student athlete and then, throughout my career.
Yeah, fascinating. Is that something you figured out for yourself or did you have help with that? Because as you just quite touched on briefly, almost because it's a given for you, was also who to associate yourself with, who to be around,
Hmm.
who to look up to in a mentoring type
Yes.
role, who, yeah, and so on. So, as a 13-year-old young lady, is that something you just figured out? It was just logical to you that, well, that's where I want to get. So, all right, let's work backwards. How do I get there?
Right. And I think at that age, we have so many great people that are just in the 2 or 3 years ahead of us, or we're able to go to like a collegiate game and watch some of the athletes there. And one of the things that I always really looked at was like, wow, these people are so skilled, any kind of athlete. I mean, I even watched Michael Jordan, but even if they were 3 years ahead of me, they could dribble better, they could jump higher, they could shoot better. And they were definitely, they were getting great grades, everything that I wanted to check off the box. But it's like, how do I do that? And the only way to really get better at something is to put in the time. And so it was natural for me to be like, taking the ball and going and doing like I would say a behind the back dribble, because I could watch these other players do it without even thinking. They just did it. It was natural for them. And so I did it over and over and over again until it became natural for me. So I think seeing that vision of something you want to become, whether it's role models, mentors, you know, just even the idea of having like a great grade or you're walking across the stage, it was just so big for me to be able to see that vision and then put myself in those shoes, in those sneakers. And then what did I need to do each and every day to become that? So having those mentors was huge. I also am a big visual learner, and people talk about vision boards, right? And how do you want to become one of those things? I even take a lot of photos and I put them in an album, a specific album that's like Anne's Mind Movie. And so I'll just, scroll through that, if in case I get too lost in Instagram or something silly, and I'll remember the person I want to be. And that's what I do like now. But when I was a kid, I was so fortunate. I had incredible parents that were so supportive on so many different levels, but I was able to put posters and pictures and quotes all over all of my room. The ceilings, head to toe, was covered in visions of like what I wanted to do. And of course, I had some animals or some art and stuff like that I still love, but everything was just kind of like embodying what that future could look like and who those people were, like what were their attributes. So that definitely helped me too. So in case I couldn't just see them in the gym or, watch them on TV all the time, I felt like I had their pictures around me and, the vision of what it looked like to be a top performer, whether it was in the classroom or on the basketball court.
Yeah, sure. Fantastic. And I'm assuming, I mean, over there, we were talking about a 5-year period from 13 up to when you began to university and starting to get interest already from those universities, which also
Mm-hmm.
speaks to your level of ability and commitment at that time, even at the age of 13. But that's quite a long time, isn't it? So did you break that 5 years down into smaller, more sort of bite-sized pieces? I mean, often, certainly in the programs that we run, absolutely we
Mm-hmm.
talk about this, talk about this long-term goal, but then
Yes.
absolutely work backwards, reverse engineering
Mm-hmm.
how to get there and put in mini goals so that you can celebrate mini wins.
You're right.
Otherwise, as you said,
Yeah.
it's easy to somehow lose your way a little bit and lose the intensity of that drive and purpose.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, the middle school years were just all about like skill sets, the little things that I could do on my own and get better at. And, then whenever we had practice or games, try to see if, my first step was quicker or I could release my shot better, so it was really kind of the testing period where I was just practicing all the fundamentals and skill sets. And I, put on that time to be, a freshman that started on the varsity team. And that was my goal at that time. And when I ended up starting to be a freshman, I was already one of the elite players in the state of Iowa. And so I had really worked on my skills, and then I played in an AAU team where all of the players on that AAU team like take a couple of different large cities in Iowa, and every one of those players ended up getting a Division I scholarship. So I think surrounding myself with players who are always better than me pushed me so much
Mm.
higher. And so a lot of the times, you'll play on 11 and under like team, but I was always like the 10-year-old that was playing on the 11 team, or, if I was on an AAU team, I was playing 2 years up. And so it just always made me drive a little bit harder to be like, everybody's great at that next level. So how do you keep improving your skill sets? And I think seeing other people that were great, I just wanted to be like them too.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we talk about the skills, the skills sort of balance ratio, skills challenge balance, and how, I mean, the magic number in the world of neuroscience is around 4%. So if you're constantly just stretching yourself, you're just, but only around 4%. It can't be something that's just too big and is unachievable. The brain says that's just not realistic. That's not achievable. If it's just constantly just outside, so you have to reach forward, which as a 10-year-old playing with 11-year-olds would just do that the whole time, wouldn't it? It would just cause you to stretch, cause you to grow each time, but without being, it's not like you're playing with a 16-year-old.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. That's exactly what it looks like, is because I was still competitive, but there was a gap, there was a tiny gap that I could go back after the game or after practices and be like, wow, I need to get better at my crossover or my free throws. I, need to get a little bit better at. And so those are just tiny steps that continued to push me to always come back into the gym and just get, and at that point, when you get pretty good, then you're looking at incremental, tiny changes that you want to try to improve on. LeBron James still shoots all the time, right?
Always. Sure. So how did that translate into the business world when you moved into your business career? Have you applied that same philosophy? You still may have set yourself a long-term goal and reverse engineer for how you're going to achieve that?
I do. The biggest one was definitely when I kind of transitioned from playing basketball, and I coached Division I basketball as an assistant coach for a couple of years. I did TV color commentary for a bunch of different years and coached camps, and I still was around basketball. And there was a point in there when I said, what other skills can I learn? I, always thought that I could come back to basketball if I didn't like anything out there, in the business world or whatever. And I always said, I do have enough skill sets and experiences and, I would say accomplishments that I could come back into the world of basketball. And so that was a big pivot for me to look and see what else was out there. And at that time, my increments got a lot less. When you're in college or high school or middle school, those increments are more like those 4-year marks, because you know that you're going to be in high school for 4 years and then college for 4 years. And then it started to be almost the 12-month to 18-month range of trying something out, seeing if I like it, if I could grow, and then move forward that way, and just keep leaning into anything that I was curious about. And I saw in myself, that I was passionate about, and I wanted to put in the time and practice. And it definitely did pay dividends in my business career. I kept doing that throughout my career. I did have, one major setback, which was, I got let go during the pandemic. During COVID. And so I will say, just because there's a lot of great accomplishments out there, there's always like kind of this underlying where people are working very hard and there might be some other things that you don't see. And that was one of them for me, was that I got let go for about 6 months. And at that time, so this was in 2020, I was working at a performance consultant firm and, was a consultant internationally, but, a lot of people weren't using, consulting firms at that time.
Yep.
And, spending a lot of money for consulting, outside consulting. So I looked at that time period and I said, where do I want to be in 2022? And that's as like simple as I got. And I didn't like talk to too many people. I really just kind of sat in that space and tried to create like with a blank canvas on where I wanted to be with my experiences. And so I really looked at the cybersecurity industry, technology industry, and I was able to find a consulting role within the cybersecurity industry, which was great because I have the performance background of athletics. and the business background to consult. And I would say that for sure was one of the biggest, reverse engineering points, is when you don't have something directly in front of you. So then you can throw that goal out a little bit further and really kind of look at that canvas and create it that way. So that was a major milestone for me to use those skill sets from way back in the day and use them in my career.
Yeah, and congratulations for that. I mean, tough times. The last couple of years, I know I'm dating this podcast episode by saying it that way, but it's early in 2022 right now. So just to cover that off, but yeah, we're still living with the pandemic, but we're 2 years in at this point. So it's put a huge amount of people through a huge amount of change. But what you're describing is not, I think, not only reverse engineering, but it speaks to something that you're expert in and one of your passions, but that you're demonstrating your own form of growth mindset very clearly.
That's right.
And I'd love to spend some time talking about the difference between fixed mindset and growth mindset as you would explain it to your clients, and how you help transition your clients if they have a fixed mindset in general or around specific topics, how you help them develop a growth mindset.
Oh yeah, what a great question. I would say one of the biggest things for me on growth mindset is, and you say growth mindset and fixed mindset. And fixed mindset comes from the past, so the things that we've already experienced, as behaviors that we know very, very well, and patterns and routines we know well. And growth mindset is taking almost that leap of faith of trying something new or being okay with failing. And that's really where I think the bread and butter is for life, because people look at the growth mindset and fixed mindset, and usually people are like, well, that could go wrong, or I'm scared about that. And those are some of the comments that you get from fixed mindset. And growth mindset, I usually try to look at, like, what if it's the best decision I've ever made? Like, what if it turns out amazing? And so when you and there's always two ways to look at it. When you put those lenses on like that, of what if it's the best decision I've ever made, the possibilities and opportunities start arising and showing up, and you start seeing that vision of what it really could look like in the future. Even for me, when I said I moved to Miami, I didn't know anyone down here in South Florida. I was, thousands of miles away from my family. And, I just remembered that one of those small questions, like or one of those small phrases I said with basketballs, you can always go back if it doesn't work out down here. And I'm like, oh yeah. But then I started thinking of the sun and the people I might meet, and what jobs like I would be looking for. And it happened to be a great decision. And that's kind of where I really look at growth mindset and fixed mindset, is just that simple question of, like, what if it's the best decision I could possibly make out there?
Well, absolutely. And sometimes adversity, such as needing to find maybe a new career path because of the pandemic, for example, it would be very easy. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who have taken that news in somehow, a victim mindset and have sort of just sat in the corner licking their wounds, versus leaning in and saying, okay, well, it is what it is. And therefore, let's look at what the opportunities are. Maybe this does present opportunities. And in fairness, I know the pandemic has been a great example of exactly that, where so many people and companies have thrived on the back of the pandemic, because it's forced them to change, to relook at the way they're living their life or running their business, and to be forced into, I know it's a cliche word these days, but pivoting. But it's true. I mean, I don't care if it's cliche. It's actually
it's so true. And it's so true, especially, just looking at, at that time when, they let go of 3/4 of our company, I hung up the call. It was a regular Zoom call that we normally have on a Monday. And I hung up and I go, in my head, I said, this might be the best thing that's happened to me. And now, did I just sit and wallow in that for, a few days? Yes. And I didn't try to immediately get into another job, but sitting with that one thought while I let everything sink and, just kind of brush off of me, was really great, because then it gave me that space to, I think you always need that little bit of a window to start looking at the possibilities that are out there and the opportunities to stretch and try something new. And it was a very hard time. It was a low time, but I just kind of kept holding on to that one little thing where I was like, I'm just going to keep leaning into that idea that this is the best opportunity for me if I can capitalize on it mentally and emotionally. So, yep, you're right on.
And I mean, typically, if you're working with your clients, or even just people um, are there any sort of trends that you see with subjects around a fixed mindset? Because as you said, a fixed mindset stems from history, from what we know. And of course, we're kind of hardwired. I mean, one of the 7 human needs is that need for certainty, which is what keeps people in very often into a routine and not pushing the boundaries and just staying within the so-called comfort zone, even though the comfort zone is often quite uncomfortable in reality.
Yes.
But nonetheless, it's what we know, so we kind of hang on to it and we stay with it. Before we know it, the years have passed, the decades have passed, and not to be too down and out about it, but
right.
that's the risk. And a lot of people are just on the hamster wheel of life and not pushing about it. And to me, those, a fixed mindset certainly speaks to that. But we're to go against that. We're almost contradicting our DNA, aren't we? Our innate human need for certainty.
Yes.
And how do you help clients or people to just look at that differently, just to think about look at it through a different prism, for example, and understand that actually there may be a world of opportunity outside of that comfort zone, and there is typically a whole world of opportunity.
Oh man, it is. Well, it's definitely hard to teach, because you have to embody it first. And I share a couple of those stories where I really had to take those chances myself. Whether that was, like I said, was moving halfway across the United States by myself, or being able to create a new position opportunity for me during the pandemic and being let go, or like I said, with transitioning from basketball into a business career. So one, you can always give those examples, right? And you mentioned the 7 needs of the structure and safety. And I always think of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I for some reason always looked at that invertedly. So it's a triangle and looked at it invertedly. And the very bottom triangle is self-actualization. And I know that means so much to me about self-actualization, as in becoming the best version of yourself, or being everything that you possibly can be, and the opportunities and seizing those. And that really means something to me. So I inverted Maslow's hierarchy there. Yeah. And so it's
I don't
very
think he'd
hard
mind. I don't think he'd mind.
and they do say that neurons fire together, they wire together. You mentioned neuroscience, and I love neuroscience. One of the ways that I've been able to really continue to sit with that, because of course I can go back to my old ways and routines and feel glum about something, but I really do a lot of meditation, and that has helped me stay present and continue to look at the future. So that is one of the practices that has really, really helped me, whether it's walking meditations or sitting meditations, because those neurons that fire together wire together, and they also can unwire together. So, and you can fire new ones. The neuroscience and the science world is young, and we're just learning more and more about it. But we have to put it into action. And so it's hard to teach a lot of people that, but when you, like we talked about a few minutes ago, when you are the person that is being something that they want to embody, that's the whole game right there. You seek people out that are up to cool things, have that positive attitude, have the good vibe of anything's possible. Let's go seize the day. And that's just, when you are that and you're around it, that kind of brings and builds a community around you, just like what you guys are doing at the Impact Project.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you. Thank you. And we do get a lot of that feedback. That just, a lot of people gravitate towards us because they just love that energy. They love the optimism, the fact that what we offer is, we're looking through the prism of positive psychology. Exactly. Let's make an impact. What is possible? And we're not being gung-ho. We're not being cavalier about it. We all at the end of the day, have bills to pay and lives to lead.
Right.
There are some practicalities of life that none of us can escape, but putting those into perspective and constantly, and again, I mean, I love to quote Rich Roll. I mean, I'm a great fan of Rich Roll, and if you are familiar with him, but he just, and it sounds so cliche, but it's so true. He talks about constantly trying to be the best version of himself, and he's not the only one that says that, of course. It's someone I followed for years, and that's, I think, where I heard it first. But it's right, isn't it?
Yes,
if we can get
absolutely.
past the hyperbolic cliche nature of that somehow is perceived in some areas of society, it's actually true. And if we all operated in that way and deeply believed in that and operated our lives from that basis, imagine what the world would be like.
You know what, when I discover that, when I meet people like, or, see people that are trying to be the best version of themselves, and like I said, positive, looking at things with the, rose-colored glasses, and I look at that and I'm like, what's something, there's a secret about them, because they're very happy. They're very happy. And I think it's something like that, where when you are expressing yourself at that certain level of goodness and positivity and anything's possible, you are becoming that, and you are like that version. And I just am so impressed when I see that. Those are the people I want to hang around, and the mentors I want in my life, so then I can remember myself to keep being like that and do my daily practice every day like that.
Absolutely. Now I'm interested, you mentioned your daily practice. I mean, the meditation is a daily part of your life?
Oh, yes, definitely. Instead of going to the gym and dribbling and being up at 6 a.m. doing that, I do the meditations. I discovered it about,
every time you say dribbling, I also think of people dribbling on
oh
their
my
chin, for
gosh,
example. Now, I
yes.
understand you're coming from a different world, but
Oh man, yes. I'm sorry, everyone. Like basketball, because I loved dribbling, and if you can dribble well, you can get around, defenders and stuff like that. So think of like
absolutely.
crossover dribbles or between your legs. I would sit, and if I didn't want to jump shoot, I would just sit in a chair like I am right now and just would dribble on the side. So it wasn't a super strenuous activity, but my hands were getting into the rhythm and the cadence. And so when we mentioned meditation, this is what I discovered for myself through meditation is I would go to the gym, you get on a routine, the circadian rhythms, the cadence of that. But even for me, shooting or dribbling, I didn't have to think about it. Like my cells, my body just moved into a certain rhythm that way whenever I was playing inspired basketball or dribbling inspired. And that's what meditation can do as well. And getting into like that positive mind frame for your entire day or your week. And that's why I got back into that, just, for me on a daily practice.
Sounds like actually you're dropping into flow state.
It, yes.
You described that exactly in the way that people would describe being in the, in the groove, in the moment. Just it kind of happens, in the flow state at the end.
Yeah, in the flow. And because when you're in the flow, you're not thinking. Your brain isn't overly wired about the past that's happened and trying to survive the day. And I've got to survive this meeting and this phone call and whatever is happening. You're more just experiencing life as it is. And that's really where I wanted to get back to, like how I felt so much flow practicing basketball or practicing going to school, those kind of, it was a meditative routine. And now, now I just choose to do that on a daily routine. So I can get into that state of where I'm just receiving, ideas of creativity and positivity out there instead of, worrying about the next phone call I have to make.
Out of interest, just to sort of take it down to a granular level for anyone who is listening to this or watching this, doesn't currently meditate, and for sure it's something we talk a lot about. We talk about it often as part of our active recovery.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Breathwork, mindfulness, meditation, amongst other things.
Yes.
And I mean, you do it on a daily basis. Do you have it sort of set in your calendar and that it's this time at this day or every day for a certain amount of time, or is it less rigid than that?
So I definitely do it every morning. I do a walking meditation every single morning. And the walking meditation really helps me because, again, I'm kind of embodying the entire experience of it. You kind of are walking into a trance. But so, yeah, every morning that is the same routine. And when I go to bed at night, I do a shorter meditation, usually the walking ones, at least about an hour. And then if I feel like I'm getting off kilter during my day, I have like short 15-minute ones where I just put my headphones on and I'm listening to certain meditations and just taking, and like I said, you said, which was great, was the breath work and really kind of focusing on your body and the breath work, because again, it takes off the mind of worrying about whatever is happening next out there, because your mind has to start worrying about how you're breathing, which is tremendous. So I do think it is such a great, like pause during your day, or in a way in the morning, like to start on a creative, positive note.
No, awesome. And what we find is, I mean, I'm almost envious that you do it for an hour, a walking meditation for an hour. I mean, I start my day with a 10-minute guided meditation every day.
That's amazing.
And part of my rationale for doing it when I do it today is a nice way to set the day up as you wish to go on. But also it's a way of, it's for me non-negotiable. It's literally, I pour myself a cup of green tea. And
yes.
Whilst that's brewing, I do 10 minutes of guided meditation. And I have just found that by making that non-negotiable in part, it's written in my calendar. That time is allocated, which actually from a cognitive loading perspective is helpful because I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think, oh, when shall I meditate today?
Right.
Or,
if you don't have it in the calendar, you will just push it off. It just will keep going back an hour and a half hour and something else comes up, and there you go with your entire morning. So yes, I absolutely love that it's a non-negotiable for you.
Yeah, and even in the one of our programs, Level Up, we introduce breath work, meditation. Actually, we do it as part of the sort of the live sessions, and it's just 5 minutes. And although we encourage people to, hey, you can do this for 20 minutes. Let's aim for 20 minutes in your own time, but we'll do it for 5 in this moment. And most people stick to the 5. I mean, they're busy. But I mean, as you well know, I mean, 5 minutes coming from a position of doing nothing in that way, to doing 5 minutes daily is significant in terms of the impact it can have.
It so is. I think of that, like some people, don't want to put down their phone for 5 minutes. So that is just such a big thing. And when I really started getting, just like you, like, this is what I'm going to do to create my day, is meditate and get myself in the best possible spot, is one thing that I heard very early on was there's no such thing as a bad meditation. So I just love that. So I know even if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes of, a little bit of breath work, it's worth the time.
You can do it in a minute, right? If you're having a really high stress moment, you can just do a minute of concentrating on your breathing and cleansing the mind just for 1 minute. It's amazing how effective that can be.
Yes, I absolutely. It's just like a reminder, like, oh yes, I'm in control of this day. I can create what I like, and see, so many of these concepts that we're talking about go together. That's the growth mindset too. If you sink in, you kind of start remembering, oh, I can create my life again. So, in the middle of all that stress.
Now, look, in a similar way, I think I know that one of the beliefs you have revolves around looking at the world in 3D, as you put it, and making things about more than you, and make things bigger than you. And I'd love to dive into that, because again, it's something that we really are aligned, and a lot of what we do in our coaching sessions and our programs, a big part of that, we'll talk about, what's your massively transformative purpose, and try and attach that to elements of day-to-day life even. And I got a nice example of that from the most recent intake, but I'd love to hear just how you came to that realization, this whole, look at the world in 3D.
Yes. I would say the biggest change for me was when I finished playing basketball and finished being at school, because again, as you are 10, 11, 12, or even younger than that, you're always just looking at that next grade and the next school year, and also the next basketball game or the next season, whatever that may be. And so when the seasons finish and school finish, it really kind of, I think sometimes I think of it as Oh, the horses that are racing, right? The race horses, and they have their little blinders on, and you just are so focused on that one goal, whether, that's school, being a student athlete, it was my thing. And so I really had those blinders on. And when that finished, I took them off, and I felt like that was a very one-dimensional, way of looking at life. And was it completely thrilling and awesome? Yes, playing basketball. But I also wanted to look and just see what else I was curious about in the world. And so that was looking at things with like that hologram 3D model of, you can have so many different interests and skill sets, and different friend groups and different places that you've lived, and how do they all just make up like who you are. And so that was really one of the biggest point where I just wanted to continue to look at everything as a big hologram, like this 3D matrix. And that was the point where everything shifted for me to continue to look at, not that things are linear, but they're actually like a full world out there. And so that's why, if people ask me, are you interested in this? Most likely I'm going to say yes, and I'll go try something out. I'll do adventures, experiences, cities, people, I'll meet them, and I'll just want to try it at least once, because you never know. I just think you just never know what could be right around that corner, what you're curious about. And that's the way that I try to look at the world, because again, I looked at it through a very, focused lens, which was great. And now I look at it at a much divergent lens. And so I want to see all the different pieces, and what I just might be curious about on the other side over there. So that's kind of the different, my experience of the three-dimensional world, and looking at things very zoned in.
Sure, and the power that comes from that when you have that realization, and even attach meaning to things, that anything, your goals or activities that are bigger than you.
Yes.
About something much more than you. And a nice example, we had in the last intake, we had one in week 5 of 5, we set the task for creating a movement challenge, and deliberately call it movement. It's not a workout, it's just about movement. And so we basically seek to get rid of the ability for any of our delegates to ever say again, I didn't have time to work out. Because we get them to design their own, so they get to design it. And we give them some help with that, but they design something that takes less than 10 minutes, body weight only, and you can do in the space where you're standing.
Oh my gosh.
There's always the opportunity of doing some form of movement. And not everyone's into that. Not everyone is excited about sports and so on as perhaps you and I are. And it's interesting. When I announce, okay, the homework this week is that, you've got to do that with your accountability buddy, and take a photograph of before or after, or if you're up for it, then you can video it and share that within our own little private community. And you just see, I get to see all the faces on screen, and some of them are quite happy with that, and others just kind of, you can see the eyes go down, and they're not excited about that. And then I say, and look, here's the deal: for every single one of you that posts that during this week, every single post will pay for a call at Lifeline Australia, which is the national suicide prevention and mental health.
Oh, that's just amazing.
And so everything we do is around paying for calls at Lifeline Action. So I said, well, and that's, as soon as I announce that, as soon as I make it about being bigger than them, just in a workout, or a little movement workout that they don't really want to do, but they'll do it because it's homework. But now there's, hang on, if you do that, we're going to pay for a call at Lifeline. And look, they're not all life-saving calls, but some of them are, and maybe yours will be.
Right. Yes. That is just amazing, man. I absolutely love that. I bet. How much did everything grow with them posting?
Well, you could see the energy, everything, the faces, the energy, everything lifted. And actually, in the last intake, we had one of the delegates was a firefighter, and he messaged us afterwards and said, "Hey, if I get 9 of my colleagues at work to do it in full firefighter turnout gear, would you pay for 10 calls?"
Oh, wow.
How awesome. Talk about the ripple effect. And we were like, yeah, absolutely, we'll pay for 10 calls.
Oh, I'm so inspired. I'm smiling so much. That's so awesome. And that you can feel the difference when people know it's not just about them, that it's something bigger. And that's where the bread and butter is. That's so awesome. I love that about you and your team. That's so cool.
Well, I mean, thank you. That's very kind. And then, of course, it's the delegates in this case who were doing the heavy lifting. They were the ones that did it, and they all did, and for sure. And then there was really, you could tell when we did the sort of the debrief in the next session, and we talked about, well, actually, and then I told the story about the 10 firefighters.
Yeah.
I said, well, it was going to be, with this many calls that were paid for, but actually now it's this many calls.
Right. Okay.
Silent round of applause on Zoom for everyone involved. But you could just tell the energy was great, and people really appreciate it. Went out of their way in the feedback sessions to say, well, I really appreciated that you linked it to Lifeline. That's awesome. Mental health, such a big deal. And it's interesting. It took the whole focus away from the pain and anguish they perceived they were going to go through.
Yes.
And a lot of them said that they even found it easier during doing their little workout, because they knew it was attached to something bigger than them, and the power of that is significant. So, I mean, the takeaway there is, if it comes back to our sense of purpose, doesn't it? It comes back to having both clear goals, but also having those goals aligned with a clear sense of purpose, and where possible, designing our lives in the spirit of that, and being as aligned with that as possible, so that most things that we're doing, we can cerebrally attach some greater purpose and meaning to that.
Bigger, greater meaning. It's just, that's so powerful and profound. And I love that about the team and all the delegates that did that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And certainly, again, looking at the world in 3D, it's another form of that.
Definitely. Yes, because again, it's not just about you and your goals. And it's always a little bit something bigger. And even the podcast I created, which is called Get Busy Living, which, it's about good vibes, like you guys have, good vibes, growth mindset, and giving back. And that was the biggest piece for me, because I wouldn't wake up just to chat with people without having a bigger purpose. So every person that comes on talks about a nonprofit or charity or cause that they're inspired by, and, want to bring in, COVID kind of threw down to be able to volunteer so much and know about those kinds of things. So that's exactly why I did it. And I know that's why I get up and do the research and want to meet people and chat with them, because I know they have an incredible story on the other end that I'm excited about. And I just had to mention that because it's so cool. And it's so cool, the psychology that's behind it, of attaching a purpose and a mission that's bigger out there, and then you start living into it. I mean, that's even reverse engineering for those folks that you were talking about.
I feel like we've just
we did a full circle. We sure did, right there.
For sure, we'll put in the show notes, we'll have a link to the Get Busy Living podcast. Absolutely, and would encourage anyone listening to go and check that out for sure. And we're coming up on time. We're kind of getting there. And is there anything else you'd like to share? Is there anything that you think I haven't gone deep enough on, or is there anything that stands out to you as you'd just like to mention, or any sort of, a bit like Springer's final thought, if you've got any sort of pearls of wisdom you want to share? Not to put you on the spot, but I think it's been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it very much, and I think there's a whole heap of takeaways in there for everyone listening.
Yes, there was so much, and I felt like between our conversation that it just kept growing, and we could have gone deeper and further in the conversation. I just really, really enjoyed it, and knew when I met you and learned about the Impact Project that this was going to be in a great alignment and conversation for you and I and all the listeners. So just thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for all of you that you're up to in the world, and making people the best versions of themselves, helping them see that light. And that's so profound, because every person we have like that, that's going to be our next mentor. So I just really appreciate it.
Oh, kind words. Thank you. And ditto, by the way. But very good. Well, there you have it. Thank you very much for listening. And if you've enjoyed this, please go ahead and share it and leave us a review on whichever platform you're using. It really does help more than you know. And if you're interested in grabbing a copy of my book, Lead by Example, which talks about how you can unleash your potential at work and in life, I would love to send you a copy. And if you go to the impactproject.io, take a dive down that rabbit hole, and it'll be on your doorstep in no time at all. My thanks to Anne. We'll be posting all of the various links to Anne's socials and her website and her podcast in the show notes. So until next time, get gritty about kicking your goals and go make an impact on the world.